Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me once again in Itoro's Hub. My name is Itoro Jimmy. Thank you for being part of us again. Sorry, we're starting a little late, but I'm really glad that we are actually here. So today, the topic we'll be talking about is the effect of high testosterone in athletes. Recently, there have been issues, of athletes being banned because of their high testosterone level. Now, for a whole lot of people out there who are not into, the world of sports or who don't follow this incidents regularly, you may not know what this is. And today we're going to be educated, we're going to be informed, we're going to be getting more knowledge about what the effect of high testosterone is in athlete. And my guest today is Dr. Babatunde Akinbinu. He is a medical instructor with FCAAN and is also the team doctor with Sunshine Stars. Nice to have you, Dr. Tunde.
The honor is mine. Good afternoon, Jimmy, and
Yeah.
good afternoon to all our viewers across the world.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome on the show. It's so good to have you. So, Dr. Tunde, before or without wasting much of our time, can you give us more insight on what testosterone is all about? What does testosterone do in athletes?
Well, basically, testosterone is a naturally occurring hormone in all human beings, regardless of gender. Basically, there are two primary human genders. Of course, I know that with LGBTs, around the world, there are also other things like intersex and all that. But yeah, whether you're male or female, all human beings have a level of testosterone in the body. Now, testosterone is an androgen. An androgen are the hormones that help with masculine activity or physical activity. They primarily help you to act a little more, do a little more mentally and physically. There are a number of other hormones, of course, like oxytocin, progesterone. There are a number of all of the other. There are several hormones, oxytocin, progesterone, and primarily in women. But you could have some levels of that in men too. So testosterone is known to be a hormone that is primarily associated with men, but there are levels that are found in women too, usually much lower than what is found in men. Follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and all of that. Estrogen. Okay, a lot of women know about estrogen and progesterone that really associated with the female menstrual cycle and all that. So basically, testosterone is just another of such hormones. Of course, it helps with male in men. It helps with male fertility, sexual urges, physical activities, and all of that. But there's some level of that in women. The same way, estrogen and progesterone too, which are primarily seen as female hormones too. We've got low quantities of them as naturally occurring in men. So the whole discussion about testosterone in athletes is almost gender specific. It's almost entirely related to the female gender to say that how much testosterone level is permissible in the female athlete. But I guess we'll go on to that as we go on with this interview session.
Now, in your line of work, I'm sure you've actually encountered, a lot of athletes who probably have gone through, challenges, trying to balance their testosterone level and all that. Does it really affect an athlete's performance?
Well, if you say my line of work, I work as a sports and exercise physician primarily in Nigeria. Yes, I've done some work outside Nigeria, but I've not had to work with athletes where we've had to check for levels of testosterone. Indeed, I think that the elite Nigerian athletes, that's because I work in Nigeria, of course, because this I told you is gender specific. But then, in my training with the International Olympic Committee, where I had training and I still undergo. I mean, medicine is all about training every day anyway. You never stop learning medicine. In sports and exercise medicine, these matters of hormonal profiles in male and female athletes, as well as intersex athletes, have come up a great deal. So I can tell you what this whole hormonal discussion and testosterone level is all about. I do understand it, but it's not something we have actually, or I have actually worked hard with, or we've seen a lot of discussions about in Nigeria as of yet. Let me start with the history of all of this. You see, in the 60s, the International Olympic Committee, which is the mother body of everything sports, under the umbrella body of the United Nations, began to run some form of, decided that it was time to run some evaluation to find out if athletes who present and participate in the Olympics as female are actually female. Remember that until Rome in 1960 or thereabouts, females did not participate in the Olympics at all. So when they began participating in the Olympics, possibly a few countries began to cheat or thereabout. And so the question was, how do we find out if, by presenting male athletes as female athletes, because males usually will have, it's just the same thing. Why can men do more than female? One of the most important reasons is the testosterone hormone. It helps with development, mental activity, and all of that, So the International Olympic Committee at that time decided that all female athletes will be evaluated physically. So you can imagine that female athletes that want to represent a country who have to derobe themselves to be assessed by a gynecologist. The big English for derobe is you have to strip yourself naked and be checked to see if your genitals are real or not. That's how gender specific identification began in the Olympics. Of course, we went beyond that much later to check for chromosomal development. All of these are specific scientific details to check, is it, of course, males have the XY chromosome and females have the XX chromosome. But after a while too, we also moved down to more scientific details, like where we are right now, to check for sexual development in individuals. Because, like you may know, that Nigeria once had a footballer whose name was Iyabo Abade at some point in time in the 1997 Female Women League in Nigeria. Today, I know she's known as Mr. Johnson. Now, that's an intersex player. Of course, the information went around to say, oh, he's a hermaphrodite. Well, we probably don't use all of that information in medical science, But there are people who are neither male or female, or they have some of both. So, in the year 2017, the World Athletics, as it was then known as IAF, decided that female athletes are going to be assessed by the amount of testosterone circulating freely in their bloodstream. Now, most women, this is where we break it down. Most women have some very, very low levels. Like I told you, testosterone is primarily associated with men. Just the same way estrogen, progesterone, oxytocin, hormones that are primarily associated with women. Women who have delivered children, for instance, usually know something about estrogen and progesterone, oxytocin, and all of that. Maybe a little at antenatal clinic visits. Now, regular women have between 0.12 to about 1.79 nanomole per liter of testosterone in the system. Normal women. The average man, after puberty has set in, usually has between 7 to 8 nanomole per liter to about 29.4 nanomole per liter. All right? Now, after some research undertaken by the International Olympic Committee in concert with IAAF, that is now known as World Athletics, it was decided that no female athlete will be allowed to participate as being female at IOC recognized tournaments that can set world or Olympic records or both if the level of the testosterone hormone in the female is greater than 5 nanomole per liter. Remember that the average female has about 0.12 to about 1.79 nanomole per liter, the average female. Now, the ruling, and this came out of some scientific research which are saying, and I think may go beyond the course of this conversation. The level of testosterone in female athletes over two competitions between the year 2011, I believe, and 2015 were assessed and scientifically analyzed to see if women that have elevated levels of testosterone greater than this physiological figure in the average woman being 0.12 to 1.79 have any comparative advantage over their competing athletes. Remember that the goal of international sports, as coordinated by the International Olympic Committee, is fair play. You know, that's why doping is a subject. That's why cheating in any form, whether intentionally or intentionally, or whether you're doping. So that's why those things are looked into. That's why if you cross lanes, so one of the reasons why Nigerian 4x4 100-meter women are not going to be at the Olympics because they cross. They didn't dope. They didn't do. The goal of Olympic sports is fair play. You must not have any undue advantage. You know, undue scientific advantage or undue natural or unnatural advantage over those you are competing against. So it was found out that for female athletes participating between 400 meters and 1,500 meters, and that's where Caster Semenya got caught in, you know, have a comparative advantage when they have elevated levels of testosterone over their competitors, you know. So that's why 400 meters, 400-meter hurdles, 800 meters, 1,500 meters are all sports where testosterone levels are looked into, you know, as not to be greater than 5 nanomole per liter, you know, in the female athlete. Remember that the average female has between 0.1, that is, let me put it this way, the average woman has less than 2 nanomole per liter. The World Athletics and IOC, the National Olympic Committee, says that you can even have it greater than 2, but don't have it greater than 5. Remember, that's about it. Now, let me put it in a simple balance. Sometimes you see a female player and you ask yourself, I think this one is male. I'm not sure she has breasts. She looks very. People ask about Caster Semenya, for instance, and if you will be fair with ourselves, when you say Caster of South Africa, you yourself think, is this person male or female? You know, is because the level of male hormone in very many female athletes, you know, who are like that, are greater than that of the average female, and you are not male, but you have physiological representations that are in keeping with that of the male. All right, so you naturally do better than the average
female counterpart.
All that this is about, you know. So in spite of the fact that most women have between 0.12 and 1.79, IOC and World Athletics I raised it to 5 nanomole per liter. You know, that's about triple the usual average, you know, for female athletes. Now, when you have greater than that, the International Olympic Committee suggests that you should have drugs, you should take drugs, not surgery, but drugs to lower the level of testosterone in your system. And very many women take birth control pills or all forms of things for family planning. And some of these drugs are exactly like birth control pills. They are not surgical. They are just things to help you bring the level of that hormone to the level that it should be in the average female athlete that you'll be competing against. Basically, that's what it's about. Now, I do not deny that there are a lot of questions about it. For people to say, wait a minute, Usain Bolt had special genes. He was not doping, he was not, I mean, as far as we know today, but he had specific muscle development that gave him comparative advantage, you know. But well, it's not, that is at the microcellular level, you know, for muscle development. But where a woman more or less not just looks like a man, but has the hormones that make men be men, but it's competing as a woman, it's as good as, do you understand? So that's what this conversation is about. The alternative argument is that some of these women say, look, we are born that way. Caster Semenya, born that way.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, an Indian athlete sued the International Athletics Federation, IAF as it was then known, now World Athletics, to the Court of Arbitration for Sports and got a favorable judgment, I think, at some point in time. You know, that said, look, I was born that way. You cannot force me to take drugs to be less than I am. I've always lived all my life as female. I've always done everything I should do. Why should I be forced to take drugs and not participate, you know, at sports like a woman? God created me this way. Now, these are the questions. But you know, the average female athlete, whether football or javelin or whatever, has about 7 times greater level of has a lot higher level of testosterone than the average female for starters. For starters, we found out that about 7 out of 1,000 female athletes around the world have elevated testosterone levels greater than that of the average woman that is not in sports. But that does not mean that they have more than 5 nanomole per liter. Now we're saying that irrespective of whatever your testosterone level is, it must not be more than double the expected maximum in an average female. And that is the decision of the of World Athletics and IOC right now. And that's what has affected these athletes, especially who compete in this sport that I mentioned, this track sports that I mentioned. Of course, there's still a lot of arguments. There's still a lot of scientific discussions in that regard. I participated myself in some of those scientific discussions earlier this year, and it's still ongoing. You know, but for the purpose of this discussion right now, that's what the rules say.
Okay, so from all you've explained right now, I'm still going to come to the Caster Semenya's issue, because we have something, you know, something similar happen earlier this July, where some Namibian athletes were actually affected. But before I go into that, so I want to ask from your explanation, are you saying that athletes have higher testosterone level than any person out there? I mean, because they're actually athletes, both male and female. Are you saying they have higher testosterone level than any other person out there?
Now, testosterone, how do I describe this better? Look, what makes a man? And I'm trying to be in the simplest street language. The chemical level. What makes you a man beyond your bones and organs and all that is the hormone testosterone.
Yeah.
All right. What makes you feel like a man, act like a man? Okay, good. Now, when you are going into, say, a sport like javelin, hammer throw, discus, those who have greater levels of testosterone, whether they are male or female, are likely to be able to call upon a greater amount of mental strength and physical strength. So it's not like athletes have higher levels of testosterone that way, but that those with higher levels of testosterone are likely to outshine those with lower levels of testosterone, even within the physiological ranges when practicing and preparing for sporting activities. It means that those with greater levels of testosterone are likely to do better. I didn't say would do better, but have comparative advantage at doing better at activities that require mental strength or physical strength. You know, so they'll just naturally do better because that's the advantage. So in like they have greater, but at their developmental stages, they will be better than those who do not have. And of course, as long as the levels of that androgenic hormone does not reduce, of course, androgen is from male. You know, androgen is from the word, it's actually a Latin word going into English and it's about male. They will naturally do better. So when females have a male hormone that is greater than, or a male associated hormone that is greater than what is in the average female, they naturally will do better than the average female, basically. And I hope I answered that question.
Sure. So, researchers found that men that are depressed, are deficient, have deficiency in their testosterone level. So, indirectly, you can say that men with higher testosterone level are less likely to be depressed. Do you agree with this research?
Yes, well, research is usually about where it is done, who conducted it,
Yeah.
the population size that it was conducted on. However, for the science as we know it, yes, I give you this. Um, the coach of Atletico Madrid, the Argentine, Diego Simeone, at some point in time, his players qualified for the final of the UEFA Champions League. And he
Champions
said,
League,
I
yeah.
want to thank their mothers. And I'm not quoting him exactly, but he more or less said these words, and I wouldn't know if you remember it. For giving birth to boys with such huge cojones. Cojones is an English word for testicles.
Okay.
Testosterone is produced and stored around the same testicles. So the greater amount of testosterone you have, the greater amount of inner strength, willpower that you are
Mm,
likely to have. So the more testosterone is flowing in your system, the more you can possibly deal with challenges that come with life without particularly tipping into depression.
yeah, sure.
I want to say that those with whatever levels of testosterone, the physiological range for testosterone in men is quite large. It's as large, is unlike women that just 1 point 0 point something to 1 point something. Men have from 7.1 to 29 point something, so it's quite large. But if a man does not have that much, if a man has female levels of testosterone, for example, you're likely to feel more feminine in mindset. Same way, if you have a lot higher level of testosterone than the average female, you are likely
Yeah.
to be masculine in mindset and courage and physical ability. When you have less as a man, aside that it can predispose you to gynecological challenges like infertility and all. It may also make you of less emotional strength. More or less, you have the hormones that make you, while you are male in appearance, you have the hormones that possibly make you a weaker vessel, borrowing the Christian or the Jewish word, the weaker vessel. So yes, I think that that research tallies with the knowledge I have, and of course, it stands to reason.
Yeah, so Grace John says this is quite interesting. So thank you, Grace. Guys, wherever you're watching from, kindly drop your comments, ask your questions, and we are talking about the effects of high testosterone in athletes. And our guest today is Babatunde Akinbinu, and he's been telling us, giving us insight on what testosterone actually is all about. And we're still going to go on. We're just 23 minutes into the broadcast, so you can still join us. We still have a little bit more to talk about. So, Dr. Babatunde, coming back to the issue, the incident of Casasamaya we were talking about earlier. So earlier in the month of July 2021, we have Christine Boma and Beatrice Masalinge from Namibia, who were actually banned, from the Olympic that would start, in a few days. And I mean, Christine Boma actually broke the world record, the 400-meter world record, and she was looking forward to going to the 2020 Olympic, that's the Tokyo Olympic Games that is starting, in a few days. And only for her to be told you cannot compete because you have, I mean, for them to be told you can't compete because of the testosterone levels you have. I mean, these athletes were really looking forward to going into the Olympics and breaking records and all that, but they got the shocker that they could not do this, and because of the testosterone level they have. Now they've never been tested. That was the first time it was ever done, and this happened. I mean, you could only imagine the shock, and the hopes that had been dashed and all that. And they said we're going to fight this through. I mean, this also happened, citing the Caster Semenya issues that happened earlier. And like you mentioned earlier, you have to take drugs, to reduce the level of testosterone in your system to be able to participate in any competition. I mean, these are for females. I want to ask, is this not, harmful to their health? Is this not going to change some things in the body? I mean, these
Well,
people were born like this. I mean, taking those medication, what are the chances, of them doing this and coming out, not harm, being okay at the end of the day?
Well, very earlier on in at this interview, you did say that you expected that I had experience, real-time experience with athletes and this,
Yeah,
and you remember that I did say that because I work primarily in Nigeria, I worked only a few times outside Nigeria as a sports physician. I do not have a lot of hands-on experience. While I have all the theoretical knowledge and I do know the basis for all of this, I do not exactly, I have not had a female athlete tested, for the levels of testosterone in the body. Now, get what that means. I'm team doctor for two Nigerian professional teams in the top tier of Nigerian football. One of them is a female team, Sunshine Queens of Accra. So I'm team physician for Sunshine Queens and Sunshine Stars. And basically the rule as it affects testosterone levels in athletes, at least as of today, it's a rule that is being reviewed. It was a rule that was suspended for a while until sometime in 2017. The research was actually done by some Europeans. One of them actually worked. I know I worked on that research at some point in time to review it, and critique it earlier this year,
mm-hmm.
and for a while it was there was a cast judgment, a court of arbitration for sports that suspended it for a while until the fresh information and the discussions at the courts and the ruling indicated that it could be brought into play at the 2020 Olympics. The meaning of this is that I have not had any athlete. No, of course, I'm not an athletic sports physician at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not had any athlete, as much as I support the sports council in Ondo State, who's been tested for levels of testosterone in the body at any time. Now, this also could have happened to the Namibian athletes because at the level we function as sports physicians, and when I talk to my colleagues around the world, the amount of sports science and sports medicine we bring to bear in Africa is pretty appalling. We almost don't do anything about it. Even at the Olympics, our athletes have the greatest amount of injuries and all of that. We have athletes with all manners of medical challenges. In not only in when they are finally elite athletes and professionals, but also in their growth and development when they come up. That's the situation that has played out with these Namibian athletes. The rule was known since as early as 2014. It was suspended for a while, but it's been brought back into use ahead of the Olympics. If you are a female athlete and you feel, because it's about being intersex, you cannot have elevated levels of female hormones, of male hormones, testosterone, and not have any physiological or physical sign at all. No, a scientist, a doctor, who will have picked that one thing or the other. But you may feel, oh, because you've got breasts, because you have long hair, because you work or whatever, you can participate, and then it sounds to you like a shock when you finally break a world record and somebody is testing for your hormones. Look, it's just natural. You can't blame the International Olympic Committee. Sorry, I'm an African, but this is true. This is science. This is what I suffer in my work as a sports physician in Nigeria. This is what we suffer trying to educate people around here, the administrators of the game, as to what things should be, and that's why this Ali can go on to shatter the world record. But look, if she has indeed shattered the world record with levels of testosterone greater than the accepted range, physiological range in female athletes that should participate in elite sports, the world record will remain. It will not be taken as if she shattered the record. Basically, because such athletes have a medical condition known in sports science as arrested levels of sexual differentiation, and development. So it's not something to be sorry about. These rules are there. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. It's unfortunate, but that's the rule. Now, to bring it down, Casa Semanya is still contesting it, but Casa's case has been known for a long time. We know she will not participate in the Olympics, and she's not the only one. There's several athletes like that. Now,
Yeah.
to bring the question about the drugs that are to be taken to reduce these hormonal levels. Now, a lot of women in Nigeria and around the world take all manners of drugs to prevent pregnancies, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah. There are drugs
that's
like
that's family planning, and they are hormonal based drugs. It's just the same way in this one. They are drugs to reduce the levels of testosterone in the system. They are short term measures that are taken. They are not long term. They are not known to drastically be of reduce the appearance or be of any medical discomfort, to the athlete. It's just the same way you take drugs to prevent pregnancy. This by affecting the hormonal system of a woman. Same way you take drugs to prevent such elevated levels of testosterone. The truth is that in very many athletes, if you have been successful, when very successful, when you have the androgen, rushing through your system to push you ahead of your female competitor, potentially when that level of hormone is reduced scientifically, you probably will not have that advantage. I just said you probably. I have not said you will not have that advantage. So the
okay.
challenge for intersex athletes or athletes or female athletes with greater levels of testosterone in their system to go ahead and challenge despite taking the drug. Go ahead. Kata Semenya has been the best in the world at 800 meters. If you ask me, I say, look, go on, take the drug, and go on to win in spite of taking the drug. While you pursue your case in court and say, look, this is the way you were born, and you should be respected as such because you are female, your chromosomes are XX, and you should not. I mean, people who are born in America, for example, have something called a better life expectancy than people born in Nigeria. So that means a child born in America today, because they have a better economy and better life index in America, will comparatively be at an advantage over a child born in Nigeria at everything on the day the child is born. Now, should you say because of that, the Nigerian child or the Black African child should not try to do the best he or she can do in order to stand at the same level or even higher than such a child that was born on the same day in America? Certainly no. You deal with the challenges and you rise above it, and that's the way it should be. So that I think that's the argument of those who are born and who live with such elevated levels of testosterone naturally occurring in their system as female athletes. Say, that's the way I was born. There are a lot of inequalities in the world. You shouldn't use this against me. There are people with other forms of genetic advantages that place them at an advantage. Taller athletes, for example, do better at short sprints or at long jump, all of that. So you don't say there must be a minimum height or a maximum height at such activities. So why are we talking about what is their naturally occurring physiological constitution? That's a compelling argument. But while the argument is still being made, go ahead. If they say there's a drug that can be used and when your doctor tells you it is safe, go ahead and use it. Defeat them at it. You're back to the wall. Defeat them. Muhammad Ali says, as a black man, you are not likely to defeat a white opponent until you knock out the opponent in the boxing ring. You don't wait for the athlete. Now, whether this is true or not, whether it's a case of racism or not, that's a different matter entirely. But that's what Muhammad Ali believed. And that's why he was the greatest at what he was doing. In the same way, if they say, look, Castor, you got to reduce if you ask me, you got to reduce the level of your hormone, take the drug. It's not going to be particularly harmful to your system. It's only for a short while. Use the drug, go on and defeat all of them and stop using it again. It's the same kind of argument that Naomi Osaka is making, at the tennis Grand Slams. She's saying, look, this is not fair for the mental health of lawn tennis players, and they said, look, you've got to do it. That's the way it has always been done. What should withdraws from it? She withdraws from it. That's a different discussion entirely. That's about mental health. So if I were Kata Semaya, I can withdraw from it like she has currently done. But then you can say, okay, wait a minute. If they don't get it while I'm withdrawing from it, I can use the drug, reduce my testosterone level to less than 5 nanogram per liter, nanomole per liter as they wanted, and I can still be the very best. But why do I have to use drug to be less than myself when this is the way God created me?
Yeah. Now coming to, looking at it from that angle, like you said, they have to take drugs to reduce it. Now there are other people who actually have had to increase their is this typical to just female? There are people who have had to like increase their testosterone level to enhance their performance.
Well,
hello, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you. Well, that is not that. Remember that all of this conversation started from females who have who more or less look like male, and there are scientific data or physiological data that can prove that they have masculine hormones that give them an advantage. Now, unlike women that have only a very narrow range of naturally occurring testosterone levels of maybe 3 nanomole per liter, men have a really wide range. Women is 0.12 to about 2 or thereabout. That's just 3. And IAF says, or what Athletics IOC says, don't make it greater than 5. Men have 7 to 29 or 30. So what do you want to increase your testosterone level to? How much testosterone does Usain Bolt have to win? It ain't about testosterone alone. Testosterone only helps you with mental strength, willpower, some physical strength. It's not so significant, with male athletes. Now, from in female, however, if a female takes a drug to increase the level of testosterone in her system, say she's probably got 0.12 previously and wants it to rise to 5 nanomole per liter in order to be at an advantage. As long as it's not greater than the acceptable threshold, it wouldn't be seen as cheating. However, there is something called the biological passport of every player. There's something called the whereabout test done for every player. Testosterone is a hormone. It's not something that you take like paracetamol. It's a drug. You probably will not take it alone without other metabolites. So if you take testosterone, if you take drugs to increase the amount of testosterone in your system, the other metabolites in the drug combination will possibly flag a doping control test when it is done. And remember that doping control test can be done at any time for any elite athlete. Your whereabouts must be known at all times, and you can have your urine taken for samples assessment at any time. Remember that there's a Nigerian athlete, there's a Bahrainian athlete of Nigerian descent that missed 3 whereabout tests for just routine doping tests, and she's been technically excluded, from the Olympics, even though she's, I think, the 800-meter champion, world champion, because of this. So if you take drugs, look, the goal of international sports, as controlled by the International Olympic Committee, is about fair play across board. If any athlete decides to take such in order to boost hormonal levels, aside that the effect is likely to be just marginal, there are other metabolites in the composition, that are most likely be flagged when, or of such whatever drug it is, when a doping control test is done. Yeah.
Okay, so P10 says very interesting. I agree with you, Grace. So I think he's quite agreeing with Grace that all the information you're sharing here are quite interesting. And now Isabella Ikoma says, how fast does the drug that reduces testosterone in athlete work when used?
I believe it kicks in almost immediately. It takes a few days to a few weeks at best, and they're just like the same drugs that are taken for contraception. Once you start taking them, it kicks in almost immediately. But these discussions really, the world hasn't even gotten to this level of conversation just yet, because many of the athletes that are involved in this are refusing to take the drugs for the arguments that I've mentioned earlier on. But the effect, because it just blocks the production. The way hormones are produced, usually they start from the brain, all the way from the brain to somewhere deep down there, to somewhere, sometimes some organs around the, what's it called, adrenal glands, thereabouts. So it's about releasing. There's something that releases it, there's something that produces it, and all of that. So that's where the drug goes on to work to stop that pathway, and basically it's, I think, gonadotropin releasing hormone and all of that. So basically those things can be easily sorted very, very fast. It doesn't take so long a time to bring it to the levels that are acceptable in sports. But like I mentioned earlier on, very many athletes will not want to subject themselves to this, because of course it reduces the comparative advantage that they previously enjoyed.
All right. So are there other genetic compounds, other than testosterone, that can actually aid high level performance?
Oh yes, I mentioned earlier on that Usain Bolt had genetic predisposition to speed. you know it's known that he's got special muscles, that that gives him comparative advantage. I mentioned earlier on that tall athletes, goalkeeper Okala, was a very
Yeah.
tall goalkeeper, and a taller athlete is likely to do better at triple jump and long jump than a shorter athlete. A shorter athlete is likely to have, in football for instance, likely to have lower center of gravity, like Lionel Messi, and not fall and be able to dribble around. So there are several things. In the human body is made, the human race is made up of a great amount of diversity, and there's several things in the way a person is built, the way a person is structured, the way a person anatomy is, that can give one advantage or the other in whichever sport or endeavor that such a person decides to participate in. This conversation is about testosterone and by enlightening our viewers, and of course general public about how that affects a lot of athletes, especially of African origin, who you can be told that, oh, these athletes are being marginalized and being maltreated, which is what I believe a lot of people think, and why should it be so? African and Asian athletes, but it's general knowledge in the developed world, that sports about fair play. An athlete who has greater levels of otherwise quote unquote male hormone will do better than the average physiological female, with regular levels of androgenic hormones, which should be really low in the average human. So that's what it's
Okay.
about.
Yeah. So looking at this right now, being a team doctor for two teams, I want to ask a very personal question. Do you have this conversation about testosterone with your teams? I mean, okay, let's say the female, because it's actually more of a female thing. So do you
Yeah.
have this conversation? Because I remember you saying earlier that it is not the World Athletics body's fault that the athletes in Namibia didn't get to know that they had high level of testosterone in them, because they've not really had this conversation. Probably this test has not been done, because of this, this part of the world we're from. So is there a possibility that these conversations, are beginning to come up, and, from your own personal experience, kindly, enlighten us more?
This discussion hasn't come up in both football teams I manage, because the rule doesn't even affect football players. It affects the research that was done showed that higher levels of testosterone in female gives them significant advantage in only a few sports like 400 meters, 800 meters. I think the heptathlon was also one of them. The 1,500-meter race. So not football. Football isn't one of them. But there are discussions that take place between I and my female players because, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this discussion, the average female athlete. I remember that athletes can be footballers too.
Yeah.
Football athletes, has a higher level of androgenic hormone than the average female that is into sports because there's a mental drive, there is a physical drive that is required to excel in sports, not just to participate in sports. And of course, at the international level, we only get to see athletes that have excelled from their local level through their state, through their country, before they excel at the national level. And then they come to the real international level. So usually, these females have, on the average, higher levels of androgenic hormones and male hormones. Amongst my players, yes, I've seen evidence. That's why I said it's unusual that there will be absolutely no evidence amongst female footballers I deal with. There's been evidence that there may be significantly higher levels of testosterone than the average females I see in the hospital. Amongst my footballers, yes, from my experience, because you may have male pattern distribution, for instance, male pattern hair distribution. For instance, and that tells you, there are several things that can tell. But does it mean that these females have greater levels of testosterone than the physiological expectation of of less than 2 nanomole per liter? Maybe not, but of course, maybe greater. And of course, the science shows it that in female athletes, there is usually a 140% level of increase in testosterone around the world, anyway, than athletes that are not into females that are not into athletics. So if an athletics coach working with or physician working with female athletes in the 400 meter to 1,500 meter race bracket, of course, we'll be testing. Once an athlete does very well and is exceptional at it, you want to check for levels of testosterone to ensure that does not flout the IOC standards by the time it gets to the international level. That's what should have been done. And ignorance is really not an excuse because the information is in a public place.
Thank you so much, Dr. Babatunde. It's been really, really eye-opening and very, very insightful, on all the things you've actually talked about today. And I'm sure our viewers have really, really gained so much. I mean, from the comments, we're saying Grace said this is interesting. Tenor says very interesting. I agree with you. And Isabel as well also sent in her question. So, Dr. Tunde, like we actually do on the show before we go, we say you should give, a shout out to somebody out there before we round up.
All right. Well, this is a hello to all our viewers, and thank you very much, Jimmy, for having me on this. And I'm not going to say shout out to people. I'm going to say, look, you guys pray for us and wish us the very best. Of course, I'm Team Physician. Sunshine Stars. We're in a difficult condition. We are going to play Adamawa United tomorrow, and we're going to play Katsina United 4 days after their bout, and Canopilas. So many games in a short period of time. We really need to win all of these games. The best you can do for us is to wish us well and pray for us, and that's what we come up high at the end of it all.
Yeah, and that they will do. And I wish you guys all the best as well. Thank you so much for taking out time. I know you're very, very busy, and I know you still, let's say in the next 5 minutes, you need to go join your team to prep. I'm so happy that you could take our time to be part of the show today. So Isabel says, thanks, Dr. Babatunde. Isabel is joining us from our bar. Thank you so much, Isabel, for being part of the show. Thank you, Teno. Thank you, Grace John. Thank you, everyone, for watching the show today. And don't forget that the show still remains on the page, and I'm still going to upload this version on our YouTube page at Itoro's Hub. And you can always drop your comments and still drop your contributions after the show right now. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Babatunde. It was really a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. And until I come your way next time, bye for now.